Hi everyone. So this is the second part of my anxiety in the professional and personal setting video. In case you haven't seen my first video, I'll just link it in the post, so feel free to watch it first and then watch this one, or even watch this one first and then the other one. It doesn't really matter that much. In the first one I talked a bit more generally about anxiety, and in this one I just wanted to give some tips and tricks that have worked for me. The important thing is that I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychiatrist, I've never even done proper extended therapy, so it really is just my personal experience and what has worked and what hasn't, and I just wanted to talk about it in a normal way that hopefully will be quite relatable, just to maybe give you some ideas. If you've struggled with anxiety for years, I find that's usually easier to deal with then, because you've already had to develop your ways of dealing with it. If it's something that maybe you got introduced to only during lockdown, then obviously you might need some more help. So that's why I've decided to make this video as well. I suppose single-handedly, the most effective for me was learning to talk about anxiety in the way that I do in this video, really. So just treating it as a completely normal subject that, doesn't have any awkwardness connected to it, or doesn't have to have anyway. So I started by just talking about it to my friends and to my partner, and also learning more about it as well, because as I said in the first video, I only really learned about what anxiety is after having moved to the UK at 19, and even then it took me a year or two to really for it to click that that's something that I've been with for most of all my life, just without realizing that it's happening, because I haven't been analyzing my own thoughts. So that's something I'll start talking about it in a minute. So yeah, that was the biggest part of it, really. Whenever I would be in a pub, for example, a crowded, loud pub sometimes can induce anxious thoughts in me, and I would feel it coming into me. Then I would usually just tell my friends and say, I'm feeling a bit anxious now, I think I'll just go outside and take a few minutes on the fresh air, and that's what I would do. I would literally just go out. Sometimes I would just stand on my own, sometimes I would chat to the smoker group that's always there. So that was the beginning, I suppose. Learning to recognize it and learning to actually voice it, and through that make it known, so that you're not just in your head about it, so that other people can know as well what you're feeling and how they could potentially help you, for example, right? So it's even things like even just saying that, oh, I'm feeling a bit anxious now, sort of makes you recognize that and makes you work through that in the moment. And I think that's the hardest part about those first steps with anxiety, is learning how to recognize it and how to think about your own thoughts, I like to call it. It's easier if you've tried meditation during lockdown, or if you've been meditating for years, because that's pretty much what it teaches you, recognizing the thoughts. And that was something that I learned even without meditating. It was just one of those techniques that I almost subconsciously started learning. So I've never done CBT. From what I understand, that's a big part of CBT as well. So that's something I would definitely be looking into at some point. It's just I could never justify the expense till now, really, because I've managed on my own quite well. But that being said, yes, so thinking about your own thoughts, the way that I've managed to do it is basically, it might sound a bit odd. So rather than thinking of my thoughts as me, as that's who I am, my thoughts are just a part of my identity. I don't know how you would even describe it. A part of that is the same thing as my ego, let's say. I would think of thoughts just as a process of my mind and body trying to voice something, right? So sometimes I could, then start thinking about those thoughts, right? So I'm analyzing my own thoughts. So I go, oh, I've just thought something that I thought quite often in similar situations, but in hindsight, it always tends to be false, right? So then I can start thinking, oh, actually, so maybe I can start bullshitting my own thoughts as well, as I call it. So you go, oh no, that's complete bullshit. Like I've already, I've experienced a similar feeling that wasn't actually completely rational, right? And then I can start sorting through them and start noticing patterns. And then whenever it would come up again, I can go, oh, that's, related to my anxiety probably, rather than, someone really is very annoyed at me, right? Without actually saying it for some reason. So things like that. And it's hard, as I said, because we're not taught to do that. It's not, it's natural, but it doesn't feel natural at the beginning, right? You have to learn. And I think, interestingly enough, my ability to analyze my thoughts is also connected to why I'm actually anxious often, right? It's almost a two-way street. Because that compulsion to analyze everything, I have it in my professional life as well. That's why I do what I do. That's why I'm a researcher and a consultant, because I do analyze everything. And if I don't give myself a project or, something that I can figure out, then I think my mind literally tends on itself almost. So I start analyzing myself and analyzing what could be wrong. And that's connected to physicality as well, which is really interesting. That's something I discovered only 2 years ago, I think. So my idea of anxiety sometimes is that, if your body sends you signals that something is wrong because of the stimulants you take. So for example, I've completely cut off coffee. I haven't had any coffee in years. 2 years now. And sometimes if I have too much tea, that also triggers it, because tea has got, minimal amounts of caffeine as well. So it builds up if you have like 5 or 6 cups in a short period of time. So then, your body starts sending you signals like a very quick heart rate, right? Or you're very energized, and because it's not your usual experience, I think then it starts thinking, okay, why do I feel that way? Why do I get those signals that are associated with anxiety, right? And then it starts looking for explanations, and because we rationalizing everything anyway, that's what people do, right? We look for patterns in everything, and if we look, I often will find them. So because of that, you will get anxious. So it's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? So your heart rate goes up, and then your thoughts start going, oh, that's why maybe I'm anxious. And then your heart rate goes even more because you found the reason. So now you start having this spiraling of thoughts that go from that. So if you manage to cut off some things that you can feel are causing, that physical kind of mental spiraling, and then if you identify the thoughts or the moments that kind of are the symptoms of that, you can start, seeing the patterns, and you can start thinking how to remedy that in a controlled way, So even just thinking about it, I think, helps to understand how you think and understand how you respond to things and what could work for you. So quite often people, for example, say that alcohol is, also inducing anxiety, and I find that that's very true for me. So I drink anyway. Like, I haven't cut alcohol completely, but I tend not to drink too much, because if I'm very hungover, then that usually lasts 2 days, and it lasts 2 days not because of the physical effects, because the hangover as we know it, the headache and everything else, feeling tired, that's obviously day 1, but day 2 is always very head-based for me. So I feel a lot more anxious than usual, and I feel a lot more less inclined to, just less in control, I suppose. I feel the difference because I'm used to monitoring my thoughts and monitoring my thinking and my feelings, then it's always just something is off, basically. And I think that's connected. And quite often we don't realize those connections between, what we consume and then how it affects our thinking as well, because we take it for granted, basically. And that's what we do. We just think, thinking is just a part of me, rather than something that I can analyze as well and kind of think of. So that's more the habits that I've developed that really have helped me be so on top of it that quite often it doesn't really affect me at all anymore, because it's just who I am, really. It's just how I think, and then I can work with it and even use it to my advantage, because I do understand myself a lot better, because I had to go through that process of being a lot more conscious of what affects me how, and how I respond to it, and how I can navigate that. And also in my relationship with other people, it's enabled me to be a bit more honest and a bit closer about my experiences, my feelings, and it's enabled other people as well to feel comfortable, to feel like they can talk to me about it as well, because for me it's just an interesting experience that we all share quite often. Even if you're not an anxious person, quite often we have anxious thoughts anyway, right? It's just something that happens, especially with stimulants, right? So that's interesting. But also in professional settings, obviously, that's very interesting, because I feel it's still something that's not as normalized, that you can just say, oh, I'm feeling a bit anxious today, so let's maybe try to keep it in mind as we're collaborating, for example, right? And I don't see the reason why not, because again, we all go through it. So if anything COVID has taught us is that hiding those things is not good for us, and it doesn't actually help our productivity, right? It actually just makes us have to find workarounds rather than actually connect over that and make collaboration even better. So I suppose one tool that has really opened up that possibility for me is something that my collaborator, Caitlin Connors, who's got the Bright Harbour Network, she's introduced us this year to something called the Manual of Me. So that's basically a template, a very simple template where you can put in your expectations and your hopes, I suppose, for collaboration, so that you can have all of those things on paper at the beginning, so that you don't have to go through that slightly awkward, perhaps, negotiation phase where you may find out at some point in the collaborative process that you have slightly different expectations about communication styles, or about the way you would like to receive or give feedback and things like that. So I personally have started using that template as a way to let other people know that, partly because I'm Polish and partly because I'm anxious, so it's the two things combining together, I really prefer people to tell me straightforwardly, if they are annoyed either at me or at something, the way I said something, or anything at all, in our relations, professional relations or personal relations, because that stops me from overanalyzing. Because then if I know that someone was made aware that that's my preference, then they're more likely to do it. Perhaps not always, because, especially in the UK context, giving straight feedback is quite uncomfortable to people. It's just not in the culture, you would kind of wrap things in a nice, polite or fluffy package more often than not. But me personally, it doesn't work for me, because that makes me really anxious, because I always feel that something is left unsaid. And in that uncertainty about what the situation is about, that's where anxiety thrives on, right? Because that's the point when you start imagining what's possible, right? What could be that bit of information that was not given, and then that spirals. So if everything is clear, you kind of, it's less probable that you will start having anxious thoughts, because then you can, as I said before, you can tell yourself, oh no, that's probably, irrational. because I trust this person to tell me when it wouldn't be right. If something is wrong, then I will know. And of course, it doesn't always work. But at least you're starting to build some safeguards, right, for having the relationship, the professional personal relationship that enables you to give out your best work or to be the best friend for the people around you, right? So those are some of the things. Obviously, if you go online, there's a lot more out there, different techniques, different ways of navigating that. I haven't tried some of them, so that's probably something that I'll look into at some point. But I just feel like the things that I've outlined in this video, that's what's worked for me so far. For example, for other things, I've heard about a technique when whenever you feel that you're starting to get disassociated or that you're starting to get a bit too much into your own head, you try to connect with your environment in a bit of a more embodied way by realizing, so you count 5 things. I won't be able to tell you that now because I don't use it, so I don't remember the whole list. So basically you count things in your environment that you can see, that you can hear, something that you can taste, something that you can touch, right? So that really grounds you in the environment that you're in rather than, into your own head. So that's, again, another technique that you could use. And that's it for me for this video. If there is anything at all that some of you would like to talk about, or, if you'd like to find out more, I'm going to post a link to my Whereby account, and feel free to just hop on. Maybe let me know before when could work for you, but it's not even necessary. I would be happy to just take your call. I'll probably get a notification. It's basically, Whereby is great as well because it's basically like a simulated room that you can just knock on and see if someone is available for a chat. And I quite like that aspect of, not having to book an appointment, which is really formal and really, really well professionalized, right? That you need to have that slot of someone's time. But, for the purpose of this video, let's say that if anyone wants to just have a chat, just knock on my door and, we can talk about it, as if it was normal, because I think it is normal, or it should be anyway.